So we have participants from MakCHS University College of Health Sciences, along with our HEPI partners, Kabale University, Busitema, Clark International University, and majority of these are low and mid-level faculty who would like to listen to your presentation on grant writing. I know it can take a week, but I think the few tips you're going to give us are going to be very valuable. And this is very important for us as we go through promotions and we go through our academic lives. So Professor Tumwine, you are very much welcome, and we are honored to have you this morning. Over to you.
Yeah, just a moment. So you are welcome. You are welcome. My talk is about developing the grant proposal. You forgive me because I have a very poor internet connection, but it is working. And can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, Prof.
Wonderful. So I apologize for coming late because of this poor internet connection, but I'm okay now. So my name is James Tumwine, and you know me. We need to remember that grants are very competitive, especially today. And there are more and more investigators. 20 years ago in Uganda, there was only MakCHS University Medical School. But now we have Busitema, etc., Guru, Kabale. So there are more investigators applying for the grants than the money available. That means the grants are becoming fewer and fewer. But don't be discouraged. Never mind. Limited, but the money is still there. So the money for research is still there. And in particular, even though the United States and the UK have also cut the money is still there. In Uganda, money is still there. So there's money from government, there's money from the corporate like MTN, money from industry. And there's also money from other areas that we cannot identify. So please don't get discouraged. The money is becoming less, but it is there. Why we should make sure that we know how to write a grant. And I can hear a lot of birds and cars. If you could kindly switch off your, if you could kindly mute yourself. Please mute yourself so that we don't get echoes and distractions. Now, if the money is becoming less and less and less, what should we do? That means we should join the competition. That means we should submit grants. Dr. Muke, I'm going to stop this lecture if the noise. So I've stopped until that noise goes away.
So can we please unmute our mics? Can we mute? I mean, please, can you mute? Otherwise, we are going to leave this. Let me ask Eddie to mute everybody. Okay, Prof, I think you can go ahead now.
I can go ahead.
Yes, please.
Very good. Yeah, so one of the reasons why Ugandans don't succeed on grants is lack of discipline. And it seems to be in our DNA, this indiscipline. Because if you are listening to a lecture, why do you now need to put on your microphone? But thank you, Dr. Mobuke. Can I continue? Yes, I'll continue. So which applications succeed depends on just a few things. One, you must have a new idea. If you learn nothing from this talk, please remember that it must be a new idea. And we call new these days novel, like the COVID-19, we call it the novel virus. So you need a good new idea.
Please unmute your mic. I mean, mute David, Robert, Innocent. Please mute your mics. We are going to mute you all.
We need good new idea. But also we need grantsmanship. And that means the skills on how to write a grant. And that's what
there is progressive reorganization of
Hello. We can't hear anything.
Well, I think Prof has temporarily gone off. Let's wait for him to get back on.
Okay. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, Professor.
I am finally on. We had to there is no power where I am, so we had to find some power.
Okay, thank you, Prof. You can proceed.
Yeah, thank you. So the issue now is, how do we start? How do we start writing a proposal? How do we start being competitive? The first thing we do is not just to attend a lecture or a webinar like this. Don't just attend a webinar or a lecture like this. We must be passionate. That means it should be in our blood, and we should be committed, meaning that like now I'm committed to giving this webinar. I had to get some emergency methods to make sure that I remain online. And people around me were laughing, but Professor, what is happening? Yes, I am passionate and committed to making sure that our middle and lower level lecturers and researchers get the skills of how to write. Some of you will not have even done research, even if you have a master's. Yesterday at the National Council for Science and Technology meeting, by the way, it's still going on, I had to start this one early. I was telling people that in Uganda, we have some people who have master's degrees, but they have never done research. That research was done for them. That research was done for them. And so somebody developed the concept for them, collected the data for them, but the proposal was approved somewhere in the university. The research product, in other words, the dissertation, was written for them, and they graduated with a master's. That type of person has absolutely no skills. But that is Uganda. I even showed a picture where people were advertising to develop a proposal and write the thesis for students. So we must step out of that situation. What do I mean? We must stop cheating. We must stop cheating. So we must have the fire burning in us so that we have the commitment to succeed in science. So I'll give you a quotation by Stephen King, which says, "What separates the talented individual from the one who succeeds is only one thing. It's hard work." So most of you, if not all of you, have got good degrees, honors, first class. Some have MBCHB, dentistry, environmental science, radiology, etc., social sciences. You are talented. You have those degrees. You are very clever. You are amongst the cleverest in the country. But if you do not work hard, you will not succeed academically. Academic success equals hard work. So if you are committed and you are ready to work hard, then you have to ensure that your proposal is one of your top priorities. Writing the proposal should be one of your top priorities. So you should set aside time to work. And I emphasize time to work. In Luganda, they call it okukola. In Kiswahili, we call it kufanya. So we must set aside time to work. Can you imagine? Many of us have mobile phones. And I have an assistant. When we are traveling, he's on that mobile phone. When we stop somewhere for lunch, he's on the phone. That means he has set aside time to watch the phone. And when I ask him, what are you watching out? Hey, I'm on WhatsApp. You know, my group have an interesting story. Your group have an interesting story, but that story will take you nowhere. And I know that those listening to me, many of them spend loads of hours on the internet, but watching things that will not lead them anywhere. Half the time they are talking about fake news and rubbish science. So if you want to write a proposal, you should set aside time to work on that proposal every single day. And you should try and eliminate or minimize distractions. That also means that we should make a plan. We should plan ahead. Not to call Professor Tumwine on the night of submission and say, can you be my supervisor? The answer is no, because I don't know anything about your thoughts and your proposal, and you are submitting in 4 hours' time, then you want me to help you with what? So you plan your time ahead to develop and refine the research topic, to obtain background information on the funder. So if it is the HEPI grant that is calling out for proposals, you read about HEPI. If it is Coca-Cola, read about Coca-Cola Foundation, Elsevier Foundation. If it is MTN Foundation, read about them. Then you should also plan how to download application forms and become familiar with application instructions. And because you are middle level to junior level, try and get collaborators. I see people when they are getting married, they are inviting, you know, come to lunch, come to my lunch. This is very good because you can't organize a wedding alone. I wish we could do the same with the proposals. Don't think that you can write a proposal alone. Get collaborators. And I know that many of you need collaborators. And getting a collaborator is a big strength. So don't call Professor Tumwine on the day of submission. Call me on the day you get the thought. so that we do the thinking together all along. Then talk to the funder, the one who has applied, has written the application. Send them an email. You say, greetings from Uganda. I saw this call for application. Do you take such and such ideas? The person, the funder, the program manager, will be so happy to talk to you. So it is not an examination. In an exam, you don't talk to the one who is setting the exam to tell you what is going to set. But in funding proposals, the funders are extremely happy to give you further tips. So it's not an exam, it's application for money to do research. So you can even bounce your idea to them and say, I'm thinking I want to study whether rats cause jiggers in Namutumba. That's for the Busitema guys. Rats causing jiggers? So the guy might say, no, that's a mad idea. But he might also say, oh, we thought jiggers were caused by this little insect, this little animal called Tunga penetrans. But you then could tell them, no, I think it is a different one. I think it's a different cause, the one we are seeing in Namutumba. And then you engage and you continue, and the guy might say, yeah, that sounds innovative. Please go ahead. Please, when you are going to write a proposal, you need to set aside special time. So do not write your proposal last minute. So you need to set aside special time. 1, to draft the application. 2, to request and obtain supplementary materials. To have colleagues vet the application. To revise, edit, and proofread the application. To prepare your budget. To revise, edit, and proof the budget, and to ensure that the data presented in the text and the budget are consistent. If you say you need 4 research assistants in your budget, yet in the proposal you have said you need 2 research assistants. So 2 and 4 are not the same. You are already becoming inconsistent. And if your proposal is inconsistent, it will not be funded. You need special time to verify that all the instructions have been followed. You need special time to route the application for institutional approvals. You don't simply write your proposal in Clark University or in Busitema without going through your head of department. So you write it and go to your head of department and say, this is the idea I have and I'm going to submit it. And it will need ethics approval. Yes, obtain the ethics approval. You don't need to wait for the time that you have got the grant. Get ethics approval for this work. And that is a big strength, which you will tell the funders and say, this work I've already got ethics approval for it. Hey, this guy is so fast. There is no money, but you have ethics approval. And the ethics committee approved it. That means it could be good work. So you are more likely to get funded if you have done that. Then you need time to finalize the application for submission. Do not finalize it on the last day. It will be nice to finalize it a week before. And if you're happy, you submit it a week before the deadline. If you submit on the deadline day, many people who have not listened to this talk will be struggling to submit on that day. And the computers can even jam. You should set aside special time, submit the application to the funder. And personally, I always do it a week before, not an hour before. And stop doing anything else. You can even take 2 days of leave. It can be sick leave, or you can talk to your boss and say, in the next 2 days, can you please give me these 2 days to submit my proposal? And most of your bosses will accept. You should set aside really the timetable. So try and write your proposal 6 to 3 months before. So in the first 6 to 3 months, you should write your specific aim. And we shall have time to talk in detail about this. But this is the most important part, your aims page, because it is in this page that you say what you want to do. So in these 6 to 3 months, you write your specific aims, you do the literature review, you identify the funders, the target funding source, you assemble the preliminary data, and you engage your collaborators. So if you are working at Busitema, already now you can see we have a collaboration group, Busitema, Clark University, Makerere, Kawale, etc. You might want to remain within that group and talk to each one of the members and say, guys, I have this idea. Can we work together on it? And you can start writing the proposal, all of you together. And collaborative research is more likely to succeed than lonely research. Just Dr. Mubuke writing a proposal for himself. Sorry, Dr. Mubuke, for giving you as an example. And I would be happy if you responded, Dr. Mubuke. Hello?
Yes, Professor. No, it's not a problem. We are in the learning process.
Thank you so much. Then 3 to 1 month, you need to write the proposal itself and complete the whole process. And then in the last 1 month, you do what I call a mock review. So you ask one of your colleagues to review your work using the criteria. And then he or she will tell you, yeah, section A was really excellent, but I think section C is not very clear. Then you should set aside 1 week to reread. And of course, set aside some time to pray. Sometime if you pray, some time to drink if you drink, and some time to cry if you cry. I'm also a poet, by the way, so I'm sorry if I'm bringing in my poetry here. We need to develop a proposal work plan. That means we make a proposal production schedule. So we identify all the required steps in the proposal preparation process and put them into our work plan. And we divide the proposal into small parts, identifying the date by which you need to complete each part. And I know that many of us have learned how to manage a project. So you set your objectives and you identify the activities. So writing a proposal is a project on its own. So you need to set objectives and identify what activities you will carry out in order to succeed. And then you should allow time to accommodate what I call Murphy's Law. And Murphy's Law, many of you know about it. It says, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Like you saw this morning, I knew that the computer could go off. But I had made contingency. And I talked to Dr. Mubuke this morning that I'm driving someplace to look for power. But when I reached there, even that place had no power. Even the diesel engine was off. So I had to quickly put plan B into place. And I'd already alerted people I'm going to do this work. So they were all there ready waiting to help me. And I think we succeeded to get the connection. But if you don't have a connection when you have a nationwide talk, it becomes a disaster. So always remember that anything that can go wrong will go wrong in whatever you are planning. And this webinar is a good example. So you must plan, put in plan A, and put in plan B, and put in plan C. Because you are committed to that thing happening. So don't allow anything to happen unexpected. So my part of the world where I am right now, there's nobody who has got power. So that's off. There's nobody who has got X, Y, and Z. So you have to do things in anticipation. So if you are writing a proposal, things can go wrong. You might be submitting your proposal and your computer crashes. What will you do? So you must, and then if you have written your proposal and your computer crashes, and you've spent 6 months preparing it, if you have not backed it up, then you are lost. You lose 6 months worth of planning. So it means that you must always allow time to accommodate for this Murphy's Law. Save your work all the time. Send it to yourself as an email. That's what I did. So I had all this work on my email. But we are human and we can get a challenge. So now if you were in my class, I would have told you to stand up and stretch your hands and and what. So let's take just 1 minute break as we contemplate the future presentation. So 1 minute break, please. And stretch your hands and your legs, etc. So at this point, are you ready to submit a proposal? That's really the question. Well, we always say ready, steady, go. So you begin preparing your application, and then we shall go through the process. If I said get ready, steady, go, and you didn't go, then don't worry, you are not ready. So you need to identify certain things, what you need to become competitive. So the first thing you do is an idea. You need an idea. But you need to refine that idea. And you could then look for additional training. And of course, you will be able to get required resources and get a little bit of preliminary data. And then you postpone. Don't put in your application. You wait for another grant cycle. For example, if I had an idea about COVID-19, and my interest is to find out skin complications of COVID-19, this is a new area. I've not seen even a paper on it. But why would I be interested in it? Because I might think that COVID-19 causes severe dermatological conditions, some of which can have serious consequences. But that's not good enough in the research. So what if you find that 80% have skin manifestations. What will that help you? Then you need to think further about the prevention, about the management of these skin manifestations, the severe ones which can take life. And then you start conceptualizing the work. And you can, because you have the COVID-19 patients, you can start collecting data without a grant. And those results, we call them preliminary data. Those results will be part of your application. And funders love that type of work. They love researchers who have already done some research in the area. So it's a new idea, and you have already, using maybe your salary, collected some preliminary data. That type of grant usually wins. So it's innovative, and you have collected some little data, not a lot. If you've collected a lot of data, you will not be funded because they will tell you, you already know the answer to your question. So preliminary data is really good. And then you should learn about the funding agency, the people where you are applying. What is their mission and vision? What is the culture of the organization? For example, if you are looking for funds in Oxfam, UK, where I worked for some time, you will, if they hear you have worked with Nairo breweries or British American Tobacco, or you are collaborating with British American Tobacco or the breweries, you will not get their money because they hate beer companies, they hate cigarette companies because of their serious side effects on human life. So you need to know the culture of that organization, the structure, the strategic plan, the investment priorities. What is the available budget for this grant? What grants have they recently funded? And what current announcements have they made out? And by the way, all this information is online. So if you're going to apply to an organization, get to know about it and see if your idea fits into their mission, into their structure, into their strategic plan, into their investment priorities. Then read the instructions. Read the instructions. Please read the instructions carefully. That means you should also look at the proposal preparation guide and the program's proposal solicitation, the one they wrote out to say we are inviting people to write on this area. And females are particularly encouraged to apply. So if you are female, hey, you're in big business because they have particularly mentioned you. But it does not exclude the male. But if they say females are particularly encouraged to apply, then, and you are male, then find female collaborators so that your team is heavy on women. I remember I wrote a grant, and Sitama was involved in this in our previous grant, Gulu and MakCHS and Juba University. And in the call for proposals, they had said females are particularly encouraged to apply. So Busitema, Dr. Napi, you know her, she's there, etc. But also we made sure that 60% of our PhD candidates that we were going to finance were women. So if you have got an Arab university or Afghanistan university where the females are taken like animals, then Afghanistan cannot compare with Uganda. So already by knowing how the funders believe, you can write your proposal to meet what they want within your original idea. Now, when funders review your proposal, this is usually a typical review criteria, the one I'm showing you now. It is from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, but many other funders also look at it that way. So the first thing they look at is the investigators. These people who are writing the proposal. What is their education? What is their training? What is their expertise? What is their relevant experience? And what is their track record? So people will look at your CV in detail, and I'm associated with many review processes because fortunately they invite me to review their work. And many times we review in committees. So they will ask you, before you review this work, go on the internet and look for these guys. Who are they? Then we also look at your submitted CVs, your bio sketch. So nobody cares whether you were born in Bunkoko or in Namasuba or in Bugonji. Nobody cares where you are born. But Ugandan researchers, they write funny CV. Born in Bunkoko in such and such a year. Went for my primary school at North Road in Mbali. Secondary education, whatever, Nkoma. Don't give too much details of those little primary schools you went to, unless there's a reason for you are doing it. So you concentrate on the things, and the bio sketches are very structured. It puts your university education, and you put the year and when you obtained that university education, and what was the main area of specialty. So I might have done BA, Social Work, Social Administration, Makerere. I did Masters of Planning, etc. at UCU. And now I'm struggling to get a PhD, something like that. But if you are a leader in your senior 6, it will come sometime later in the CV. So your CV is extremely important because the reviewers will form a composite picture of who these guys are. This team, can it really manage a project? The second one is the environment. we assess the environment. What access do you have to particular facilities? So if you have 15 computers in your library, please say that. Don't be afraid to say, we have 15 computers, we have, each one has a printer, you know, in our library, etc., etc. We have a lab, we have a molecular lab, we have a lab where we can do blood cultures, etc., etc. Don't be afraid to show off the facilities. And in your institution, you know, we have a research committee headed by 3 professors or etc. who are highly qualified. You know, show off this facility you have. People want to know the environment you have that can support your research, but it has to be relevant. So if you are studying molecular biology, it is irrelevant to tell me that you have a professor of history. But if my research is on the conflict in Somalia, then if on my team we have a professor of history, oh my God, this is very important. So it could be on the health services, how they have collapsed in Somalia. And I could have a professor of history on my team. That makes it multidisciplinary. And I will then say, Professor X with a PhD in history, specializing on the Horn of Africa. And particularly, he has looked at the causes of conflict in Somalia. That is going to be very, very relevant. So your team, the environment and your team is going to be important. And of course, you need support of your university. Don't just apply without the support of your university. So you need letters of support, like in Busitema. You can get it from the highest level, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Wako, and or the Dean, etc., etc. The third area that we look at is the significance of your study. What is the importance of this project to your field? If it is, for example, in the area of nursing, and I know that there are many nurses on this webinar, you need to be confident. If you are developing the nursing area, you need to be confident about nursing. Don't start going now to medicine or dentistry. There are some people who are a particular profession, then they want to join medicine. Forget about that. Try and develop your area. If you are in nursing science, there's hardly any research going on in nursing science in Uganda. I can assure you, I do a lot of searches. You need high-level research in nursing. Don't just now drift off into social work, social administration, but you're a nurse. Why are you not researching nursing issues? There are so many. And get your PhD in nursing, not in public administration. So we need to be very clear and keep to our fields. So the research, how important is it to the nursing field? But it's not only the nursing field. It could be the nursing of burnt patients, the nursing of injured patients. And hardly any work goes on, but go to Mbale, go to IHK where you are, go to Kabale, go to Mulago. There's so much trauma with these borders. Are there no nursing issues concerning those patients? Apart from identifying their knowledge, we need to move higher than the KAP studies, knowledge, attitude, and practice, and work within our profession to address the real issues. For example, when people come with border injuries, are there no nursing issues concerning those injuries? If you have an overcrowded emergency department and you have one nurse working there, how does that impact the patient care in terms of the nursing? I really want to challenge all of us on this call to try and develop our disciplines. I was in Newcastle, in university in South Wales in Australia, when we were establishing the College of Health Sciences at MakCHS, just before we did it. And I found the dean, I had to go and meet the dean of nursing. Yes, she's the dean of nursing and with a PhD. So we need to be and respect. We need to respect our professions. Don't just go, yeah, we shall also be called doctors. Of course you'll be called doctors. But it has to be PhD. Not simply wake up, this profession now, the people who treat dogs, they call themselves the doctors. Now the carpenters also will be doctors. No, the architects, they are called architect muherwe. The engineers are called engineer, of course. But now, yeah, we are studying chemistry with them. We also want to be doctors. That's a lot of rubbish. I'm sorry for using that language on the national platform. So the significance, importance of the project to the field, that's really, really important. Approach. This means the method. And we shall have opportunity if Mubuku allows for the future webinar. The methods mean what you will do to achieve the objectives of your project. So the methodology is so important. Then the innovation, that means how original is your research? How original is your research? And the more original, the better. But in many cases, you'll find that maybe that work has been done, but it was done in Greenland. But we live in Uganda. So for Uganda, that will be an innovation. But it is much better to try and find an innovative way of doing things. I'll give you an example of my son is a pediatrician. He developed a very innovative process. And that was like 10 years ago, but now it is becoming the norm. And he said, we have got mobile phones. If I'm in a clinic and I've done your rapid diagnostic test for malaria, that rapid diagnostic test for malaria is visible to me that it is positive. It is also visible to the patient if you allow them, and people within the lab. So why can't I take that phone which I have, photograph that result and send it to Kampala Ministry of Health and keep it. And every person who does malaria test in Uganda sends a picture to the Ministry of Health. Can you imagine how many of those pictures will go to the Ministry of Health? There are thousands of people being tested for malaria. So within 1 year, you'll have millions of those results. You will analyze them, and you, as somebody in charge of malaria in Uganda, you're in Kampala, you will now even draw a map to show you where this malaria is. You know the prevalence of the malaria. You share that information with the national medical stores so that they know where to send the medicine. So my son, that was his idea. Everybody's doing it now. But he got a nice grant and implemented it with Canadians in many, many, many places, including Nigeria. And the same type of work was used to do a national HIV survey. Instead of sending out all these land cruisers with research assistants, drawing out a lot of money, you just sit in the Ministry of Health, and each clinic every day, every time they are doing an HIV test or malaria test, they're sending it to you. And because our telephones record time and place, they will also tell you this malaria, at what time do the patients normally come in, etc. Well, it's unfortunate that we don't have a face-to-face work because of this COVID-19, but I know that one has excited you. Okay?
Yes, Prof. That's very exciting indeed.
Yeah, and that is called originality. So the people are testing for malaria, they have mobile phones, but now the idea was excellent, innovative. And he did it after getting his M.Med in pediatrics. So the originality is really, really important. Trying to use our brains to brainstorm an issue that can help create knowledge and that could help improve service, etc., etc. Then the last one they look at is the budget, whether this budget is appropriate. Is this budget appropriate? Remember that reviewers are overcommitted, like me. I just have too much work. They're overworked, and at the end of the day, you are so tired. And yet you have to carry out this review of a project from Busitema or from wherever you are. Reviewers are skeptical and they are critical. And by the way, they are not interested in your work. They are only interested in theirs. But because they've been asked to carry out this task, they develop a peripheral interest in your work. Otherwise, they are not interested in what you are doing. So you make their job easier by getting well organized and clearly written prose. That particular sentence, that particular area, I picked it from Sharon Milligan, and I've quoted it, so you can look it up and read more about it. So you should, as you write, remember to put lots of section headings and breaks in the writing. There's some work I looked at, and the whole paragraph, there was no comma, no full stop. It started at the beginning of the paragraph and ended at the end of the paragraph as one sentence. That type of writing will not be funded. If you write Kampala with a small k, or you write Busitema with a small b, or Makerere with a small m, or Uganda with a small u, please forget about funding. And that's how strict the funders are. And you remember when we mark students, this is how they are writing these days. I don't know, you write Mubuke, but it is a small m. I am telling you, if you write like that, nobody will fund you. So you must be strict with the English writing. Unfortunately, it is the language in which we are using for grant application. You should repeat important points at several places in the application. So, for example, if you are talking about the importance of having accurate national data on malaria, you can put it in your introduction, it comes in your objectives, etc., and in your methods. So you need to keep re-emphasizing these areas, but in a clever way without being noticed. And then you use well-designed flow diagrams and charts and figures. You should avoid irritating the reviewers. And let me give you a few examples which irritate the reviewers. If they say they need 10 pages and you have 11 pages, your grant has already been rejected. When they say 10 pages, they mean 10 pages. You can write 9, you can write 8, you can write 10, but if you write 11, you have no grant. I've already said, don't use, no, I haven't said, don't use small fonts and narrow margins. Very, very small font, like 9 or 10. You are trying to fit in a lot of material. Many of the reviewers have bad eyes like me. So if you make the font below what was recommended, then it's a problem. Usually the font is 12, but you need to read the instructions. If they say we need it in Arial or Times Roman, you use Arial or Times Roman. And if they say font 12, you use font 12. And don't use narrow margins. Use wide, reasonable margins. So please don't exceed the page limits. Don't use small fonts or narrow margins. Don't put information in the wrong section. If you are doing the literature review, don't start now putting in objectives. Review the literature, and at the end of the literature, make a conclusion about that literature, particularly identifying the knowledge gaps. After reading, then identify the knowledge gaps. Don't omit or mislabel references and figures. In other words, also don't submit an application that is sloppy. In other words, the one which is full of typographic errors. In Windows for Word for Windows, in Google, there is a function for spell check. So when you finished your work, do spell check. Make sure there is no spelling mistake. But all those things, they irritate reviewers. And once a reviewer is irritated, they reject the proposal. Sometimes we get irritated when we are marking the students, but you can't you can't refuse their work. You have to serve internal and continue marking. I'm talking to you as somebody who does marking. The student irritates you the way they write, but it is my responsibility as your professor to continue marking you. But with grants, hey, if you irritate a reviewer, that is the end of you. They will just say, this is rubbish. It is so badly written. I have put a number of things. Many researchers, when confronted by a writing deadline, they skip the organizational phase of training. But we have already told you that you must plan. So if you are going to write the grant and it is 3 days in 3 days time and is an NIH grant, you will not get it. It is like going on a journey without any plans. They ask you, where are you going? I'm going to Mbale. So now you're in Kampala, they ask you, where are you going? I'm going to Mbale. What are you going to go to Mbale to do? By the way, I don't know. You don't know why you're going to Mbale. That means you need to see a psychiatrist. You are boarding a bus to Mbale and you don't know why. Very early on in the process of your application, you should identify the relevant institute or other funding unit in the organization. So which one? Who are the program officers likely to handle my application? Then you get to know them. I wanted to share with you quickly reminders on NIH applications, but not spending too much time on them, that you must read the instructions. You must know what the deadline is, and please put it in your diary and know that Monday the 15th of October is the deadline. And we have already discussed and agreed that possibly we should submit this application, which is due on Monday the 15th, submit it on Monday the 8th. Submit it a week before. That previous week, give yourself as the last. And then those who are struggling, let them struggle. For you, you'll be one of the people to arrive early. And of course, sometimes like in NIH, we need to register for internet-based application. We call it the Error Commons. You need to have a local dialogue with your people. If you are doing, especially in your department, if you are doing a lab-based study, talk to the lab administrators, talk to the finance people, you know, with the budgeting, and of course, do the approvals and all that. And then we get in touch with all our collaborators, people we want to work with us. And if you've been working with somebody on your proposal, then you ask them, please give me a letter of support. And then you need to organize and get CVs, the bio sketches, and make sure they are written in a marketing form. You are marketing yourself. Remember that the bio sketches is number one when we are assessing. We are assessing the personnel in these people, in this project. So take it seriously. We could, for the scientists, we could talk about the science issues, but this applies to everybody. So you should read the literatures broadly. Don't do too much reading into the literature, because you will read them later for a deeper read. So do a scan of the literature, see what your idea is, and see whether there's a research gap. But don't read too much at this stage, because it will confuse you. And then you save the papers, probably 5 or 6, 7, 8 on your proposal, and you can read them later for more details. But right now, just do a wide read and identify the subject and whether it's going to be innovative. Then engage your laboratory, your mentors, your colleagues, your collaborators, as you brainstorm what your idea is. And feel free, tell them, I have this idea. What do you think about it? And then you engage them. Then find outside experts to talk with. But go prepared. Go prepared with an idea. As you talk to the expert, go with an idea. You say, I would like to do this. Does this sound reasonable? Then you have a dialogue. When you are having a reasonable idea, you talk with the relevant funding organization program officers. And as I've said before, you should note the early, you should do this early, meaning that you are going to do it 6 to 9 months before. Look hard at your publications, what you have published, if you have any, and agree with yourself that this publication, I have to put it on my CV. You are going to put all, but you emphasize those which are really relevant. Let me tell you, insufficient publication record is a common concern for reviewers. So if the person is submitting and has never published, it's a big deal. That's why all of us must emphasize publication. All of us have done master's degrees. Doesn't matter if you did it 10 years ago. Just convert it into a paper and try and publish it. Because insufficient publication is a common concern during review. You need to submit preliminary data. For example, if you are studying injury, I would go and write a small proposal for yourself and say, what is the pattern of head injury at Mbare Referral Hospital? Or if you have an idea, try and implement that idea already of your project at Mbare Regional and collect the data, but do a pilot. So you would call it a pilot. I'm going to study 100 of them, 100 injuries, and see what caused the injuries. And you're not going to publish that, but you're going to use it as preliminary data, which will help you as you apply for a bigger grant. For example, if I wanted to prevent border accidents in Mbare Regional Hospital, I need to know what is there. So you can quickly scan the environment and have this preliminary data. And I can assure you, people who have preliminary data are more likely to be funded. identify the methods you need to learn about or to develop expertise in. You may not have the skills on those methods. So identify them and start getting knowledge and skills in those methods. And ideally, you'll know, or you may know someone who knows someone about the methods you are proposing. So don't give up if you don't know how to use that method. But you'll do it. You know, if you are doing social research, qualitative research, there's a program called In Vivo, and you may have heard about it in the literature. But now you have to use it, so you have to start learning it. How does In Vivo help me analyze my qualitative data? If I do focus group discussions, what is this In Vivo? And how does it help me in analyzing my data? So now you must start learning about it and start using it. If you are doing a lab-based study and you need to talk about the reagents, the tissues, the human participant issues, etc. If you've never done a randomized controlled trial, you start learning about it. You don't simply say, yeah, my medicine, I gave it to people with cough and they recovered. Yes, they recovered. But that is not science. And even if you get loads of money to do that study, nobody will recognize you internationally. Only people in your village will think you are a good researcher. I wanted to talk briefly about what makes a research project fundable. The first one is that it clearly addresses an important problem, and typically not more than one problem. So in your research, don't introduce many problems. Just focus on one problem. And I ask my friends who consult me, oh, Professor, how do you think of our proposal? I said, no, I'm not going to read it. Let's just talk. What is your research about? You know, I'm going to Guru, I'll do focus group discussion, but also since I want a mixed method, I will also, you know, weigh 200 women. Hey, you are doing focus group discussion on what? You are weighing the women for what? What is the problem? Me as a doctor, when I see a patient, I want to know, does this patient have malaria? Yes. So the problem is malaria. That's as tough as that. So the problem must be in one word or two words. So don't go around the bush telling stories. In Uganda, HIV was recognized in 1987, 85. Now we have so many millions of HIV children in Uganda, in the world, 90% of whom are in sub-Saharan Africa. Rubbish. I'm sorry. That is rubbish talk. Just tell us the problem. What problem are you facing? The problem I'm facing is that in the surgical ward of Mbale Hospital, 90% of the patients are head injuries, and they are due to border accidents. So, but what are you studying? The problem is high mortality from border accidents. Oh, death of border accidents. That's the problem. That is the problem. Mortality, high mortality of border accident victims. And you have concretized it. And we can talk more about it, but that is the area. And this is what kills researchers. If you cannot talk about it in one word, then you don't know it. Secondly, we should, if it is driven by a focused and testable hypothesis, then it will be funded. So your project should be driven by a focused and testable hypothesis. It asks questions that prove or disprove a hypothesis, rather than simply collecting data. Yesterday, I was talking about it at the National Council, and I used the word fka. I don't know whether that is Luganda or Kiswahili. You don't collect data fka. The fundable research is the one which lays foundation for further research in that field, and the one which is likely to impact the way we view a problem. It opens new fields of research. And the application looks like the right person, the applicant looks like the right person to do it. He or she has had some experience. It is a nursing area, and she's a nurse with already a master's in X, Y, and Z. That looks like the person to do it. And all aspects of the project are clearly linked. So before writing, you should look up specific funder guidelines on how to write the proposal. They will normally give you the rules, the format, the length, and the pages. For example, the introduction, they might tell you we want only 1 page. The specific aims, 1 page. The research method or the research strategy could be between 6 and 12 pages, but it will depend on the call. And of course, you should understand the review criteria and keep this in mind as you write. And I've already gone through with you the review criteria. I'll give you now examples of page limits. The introduction, 1 page, specific aim, 1 page, etc. I've also told you what the reviewers go through, but I want to repeat them. And the reason I'm repeating them is they are the most important. So they judge the overall impact of the work, and then they look at the core issues, the significance, the investigators, the innovation approach, and the environment. And they also look at the ethical component of the work. When they're looking at the overall impact, they will ask themselves, will this study have sustained, powerful influence on the relevant research field? And it depends on the 5 areas that we looked at. Now, the significance is the proposal addressing an important problem or barrier to progress in the field of study. How will the aims of the project improve knowledge, technical capability, or clinical practice? How will this change the concepts, the methods, the technologies, the treatment, the services, the preventive interventions driving this field? So it will depend strictly to the type of field you are going, but it's the same. It's the same question. The investigators I've already talked about, but basically the PIs, the collaborators, the other researchers, are they suited for the project? If they are new investigators, do they have appropriate experience and training? If they are established investigators, have they demonstrated ongoing record of accomplishments that have advanced their field? So I talk to my senior colleagues, it's not just being a professor or senior lecturer, you must continue doing research and publishing. If you have multiple PIs and or it's a collaborative project, what is complementary? what is each member bringing in? And in terms of leadership and governance of this study, how will it work? And how will the leadership work? Innovation. Does the application challenge and seek to shift current research or clinical practice paradigms? For example, by using theoretical concepts, approaches, methodologies, instruments, or intervention. And are the concepts and approaches and these changes you are proposing, are they novel? Are they innovative? Are they new? And then your approach, this is basically the methodology. Is the overall strategy, methodology, analysis of data, etc., is it well reasoned and appropriate? And are the potential challenges, alternative strategies, and benchmarks for success presented? And if the project is in the early stage of development, will the strategy establish feasibility? And how will risky areas be assessed? If the project involves clinical research, what are the plans for protection of human participants? What are the plans for including minorities? I find this usually a challenge in Kampala, where people say inclusion criteria, able to read English or Luganda. Hey, what about if I'm from West Nile or from Soroti? Or from Mbale for that matter. Oh no, people in Mbale no Luganda. Oh really? So that does not augur very well. You must think about your study and it on the way you are going to include the minority who may not know the local language, for example. How are you going to include males and females reasonably? What about the inclusion of children? And the plans, are they justified in terms of the scientific goals and the research strategy proposed? And the environment, I've already talked about that. So we want to go a bit deep into it. So before I end, I want to propose that I show you a simple research plan. So you'd have, for example, the introduction, the specific aims, research strategy, etc. So the research plan is like your master's proposal, or when the way you write a paper. So you write the introduction, and after that, the specific aims. These are really the objectives. And then you put the methods, which is the research strategy. But when we are doing the research strategy, that's where we put the background and significance, the preliminary results, preliminary studies, and then we put the research design and methods, and the human subject section, etc. Let me reiterate. Let me say this again and again. When you are designing studies, and I'm talking to people who have, you probably have your master's and you're waiting for your PhD, or you have your PhD, but you haven't moved far. When designing studies, you need clear research question. And many times hypothesis. But you must have a clear research question. You need to describe how you minimize bias in your work, and you should have adequate sample size. And you can talk about valid and reproducible outcomes. You should also, in your study sample, collect baseline material, baseline assessment. And the reason why we do baseline assessment, we need to include in that assessment potential confounders and effect modifiers. And then we need to talk about the plan of analysis. For example, you may wish to use an experimental study design that will achieve your specific aims and test your hypothesis. So you need to check again as you plan that the research is significant and innovative, etc. The design that we choose should depend on our research question. Let me repeat, the design that we choose should depend on our research question. You just take one on top of that table. Does that treatment work? This treatment which we are proposing, if we sprinkle water on top of the head of somebody with a headache, will that headache go? Does that pouring of water on the head remove the headache? That's the research question. Well, we don't know whether it will work. So we need to design a study to prove that when you pour water on top of patients with headache, the headache will go. And that design, the most suitable for that is called randomized clinical trial. There is no other way that will prove that a treatment works. And that's what makes me very sad, that people develop their treatment, the innovative idea that pour water on the head and the headache will go. And then they start telling people, you know, if you have a headache, you just pour water. Where is the proof? So you need to design a scientific study to prove it. And if you have learned nothing from this talk, please, I hope you have learned that. If you want to know how good a diagnostic test is, there are other ways of doing it. But let me possibly say, if you want to know what people think, then you do a cross-sectional study and you go and ask them what they think. Or you could go and live with them. In other words, you do ethnographic study. And we've done some of this work, wanting to know how people use water in their homes and whether this impacts the prevalence of diarrhea. You don't just go one day and just collect data. In one of our studies, it was all over East Africa, we had to put research assistants. They go into the house at 8 o'clock in the morning and they leave at 7. Of course, it had methodological challenges. If you send a man to Iganga and he enters a home, a Muslim home, and there is a woman there, now the husband wants to go to the market and he's called a mchinjaji, he's going to cut his meat. He's a butcher. Now you are leaving his wife with a male research assistant? No way. So this affects even the way we choose research assistants. We had to choose female research assistants in such situations. But the people went every single day for 30 days in every household. So we had one researcher remaining in the house for 30 days. And then we had a reasonable fear on how people use water. Not just asking them, how many liters of water do you use? No, we recorded every drop of water used. And those are called, well, some of them, but that's like really part of ethnographic studies over time. So you need to know the research method question and you consult what research design is best or appropriate. Don't just go think that you are very clever and that you know you have a PhD or maybe you don't have it, and start doing rubbish. Dr. Mubuke, how much time do I have?
I don't know, Prof, when you would like to stop, because you said you are going to the UNCST conference.
No. I'm committed to this presentation, so I can continue if people want.
You can finish up, I think, Prof.
No, I don't have to go.
Okay, we can continue up to the end of the presentation.
Okay. So the title should be specific, and it should include research area and the project goals, but it should be 200 characters or less. Characters, not words, characters. It should use simple language and include the research problem and the approach, perhaps, and you should have the appropriate keywords. The specific aims should try and excite the reviewers about the project. And if you are testing the hypothesis, rather, I've already said it, that if testing the hypothesis is the destination for the research, then the research plan is the map that takes you there. We should start by writing the specific aims, usually 1 page. And this is the capsule of the research plan. People will look at the specific aims first. So we start with 1 or 2 paragraphs as general overview, basically saying what the proposal is all about. And then we list the aims clearly defined. And if you want to know how to do it, you've already learned how to write objectives. So an objective should be SMART, which all of us have learned. SMART, simple, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, etc. And then once we do that, we end with a brief statement of what will be learned if the aims are successful. So we write the aims, and then at the end of the aims, we make a brief statement of what will be learned if the aims are successful. Please note that on reading this section, the reader must be convinced that the proposed work is significant and that the approach is feasible, and the aims, therefore, must be stated clearly and concisely. When we are writing about significance and innovation, and remember, these are the ones going to be judged, then you should clearly state the importance and innovativeness of your proposed research. What are the controversies? What are the discrepancies that the work will address? In other words, the research gaps, the controversies, and the discrepancies. How will your research address them? But in doing that, you must discuss other people's work with references, talking about the controversies and talking about what is missing. And this section is very important and generate a lot of enthusiasm for the reviewer. The approach, remember that is also being marked. So the approach, you organize this section by specific aims, discuss the controls, feasibility, sample size, patient recruitment, data analysis, basically the methodology that you used when you wrote your master's. That's the type of approach we are talking about. But here we are calling it approach. So we take objective by objective, and then feasibility, sample size, patient recruitment, if that's what you are doing, that analysis. And the expected outcomes of your work in terms of variables, data interpretation, how you'll do it, and what problems you anticipate during this work and how you'll address them. And preliminary data to generate excitement and enthusiasm for the proposed studies. And this shows feasibility, that you are capable of doing what you are proposing. And you can use figures like bar graphs, etc. And they should be large and easy to read. Good research plans state the rationale for proposed studies. They use flow diagrams for overview and complex experiments and protocols. And they include well-designed easy-to-follow tables and figures. And they address priorities if patients' reagents and resources are limited. They include a discussion of how the data will be analyzed and interpreted. And they include realistic discussion of the pitfalls and provide literature approaches, alternative approaches. You should stay in the niche of the proposed project and propose a project that addresses a highly significant problem. And make sure that you are innovative, making sure that you create new knowledge. You outline up to 3 specific aims and 1 more testable hypothesis. The specific aims can be achieved within 4 to 5 years. And make sure you have clear endpoints. So in each aim, in each objective, what are the measurable outcomes, but how will you end? When you reach this, how will you end? So the endpoints. Let me just go through this. Now, I wanted to talk about hypothesis stating. When you talk to students about hypothesis, they want to die, I can assure you. Hypothesis, hey, Dr. Ngo to say. You're kidding us. So just enjoy. If you don't know hypothesis, don't worry. Don't worry about Naru, Manyawat. Don't worry about that. The hypothesis I'm wanting to teach you is the research hypothesis. It's not the statistical hypothesis, please. So don't get sick because none of you studied the statistical hypothesis and you couldn't understand it. But today we shall talk about research hypothesis, and we won't even go into what it means. So, for example, somebody might say zinc supplementation to children will reduce pneumonia. Zinc supplementation will reduce pneumonia in young children. So that is a very poorly stated hypothesis. Reason, because it is too general and it has no details. So how would I state that hypothesis? zinc, that is 1 recommended daily allowance, given as a single oral dose daily for 6 months. To children 6-35 months of age in whom zinc deficiency is common. Will result in a 30% lower risk of pneumonia. So this is a very good hypothesis. What are you studying? I am studying the effect of zinc in the prevention of pneumonia. That is my problem. So what is the problem that you are studying? I'm studying pneumonia in children. That is the problem I'm studying. Pneumonia in children. It is a big problem, and I would like to prevent it. And I would like to use zinc to prevent pneumonia. So I want to know, my hypothesis is that if I give a single oral dose, that is 1 RDA, that is the required daily allowance. Given a single oral dose daily for 6 months to children aged 6-35 months of age, in whom zinc deficiency is common, will result in a 30% lower risk of pneumonia. You see, if you state your hypothesis like that, this means it's a randomized controlled trial. But of course, you may not know that it's a randomized controlled trial until you go to the methods. But the hypothesis is very clear. What I want to discover is very clear. And once you state it like this, the design is also becomes very clear. You are going to be giving medicine to these children. That means you must have another group to whom you are not giving the medicine. And you compare the two. And that is it. I wanted to talk about contents of the application. So the application should have a first page, then it should have an abstract. That means the description. Then the performance sites. Where will you do this study? So I'll do it in Mbale. I'll do it at KIU, Ian Clark University. I will do it at Kabale School of Medicine, etc., etc. So you must put the performance sites. Then you put the key personnel. Normally it is the PI's name which appears there. And then the table of contents. Detailed budget for initial budget period, budget for entire proposed period, biographical sketches, resources, then research plan that I've spent a lot of time on it. That means the proposal, the core proposal, and then the appendix, the checklist, then personnel who are going to work there, and then the personal data. But this is an NIH grant. You will have to follow the instructions to the researchers. This normally NIH wants it like that. But it depends on the funders. They will often tell you what they would like and how they would like that organized. So, yeah, so you remember all those, that you must have a lay abstract, project summary, bibliography and references, facilities, equipment, letters of support, etc., etc. So they are variable, and I don't want to go into details on this. Let's see. Yeah. Or maybe we should, I was going to remove this, but it's a repetition, but let's see if I can change this. Yeah, consortium contractual arrangements. The roles of individuals or organizations with whom you have made such arrangements should be noted, and reference made to any letters from them that are included in the application. That's really, really important. And the letters should describe the individuals, organizations' understanding of the consortium and the contractual arrangements. So I'll just pick that from there. If you have any consultants, normally, if you don't have the skills, then you should think of hiring consultants. And consultants can add credibility to your application, especially if you do not have in your team people with knowledge or experience of the subject. You can propose to hire consultants, and they will increase credibility to your application and improve its quality. And that means you should have a letter describing the willingness of that investigator to participate as a consultant to your project. And that should be included in your application. The abstract, you should write this carefully because the funder's referral office at HEPI depends on it. Normally, they don't read the whole proposal. The officer doesn't read the whole proposal. What they do, they read the abstract and then decide where to send this application, and which review panel should look at it, and which institute or center is handling it, meaning that which department within NIH is handling your work. And once you are not clear, if he can't get the story from the abstract, then it makes his or her life difficult. So abstract is really, really very, very important. In the manuscript writing, we say that it should be like the skirt that women wear. It should not expose everything, but it should arouse the interest in the research. Now, writing the abstract, it is the last thing you want to do. Don't begin with it. Don't begin with the abstract. It is the last thing you do when you have finished writing up your proposal. And make it clear, succinct summary of your project within the 200 word limit. It should state your hypothesis, the objectives, why the objectives are important and innovative, and the plans and methods for accomplishing your goals. So it is easy to write, but write it at the end. And for me, the way you normally write it I structure it before I write it, and after writing, I remove the keywords of the structure. So basically, I start with the introduction, which should be one sentence or two, then the hypothesis or objectives, and then the methods, and that's it. So I write those areas, then after that I remove the structure, because they don't like structure. But for me, I like structure because it will help me in the thinking process. But before I present it, then I remove the structure, the structure headings. The title, also you should write it last. It's like a woman has been pregnant for 9 months, delivers a baby. You don't rush to give this child a name. So the title, you wait, you'll give it. But it should be within what you've been telling people. So you make your title specific and detailed. If your application is a revision, you don't need to change the title. But remember, they gave us only 200 characters, so we stay within the character limitation. Yeah, the birth sketches, you show them off. You need to be convinced that the investigators have the proper experience. And they look carefully at the bio sketches. I've spent a lot of time on it, but repetition is the art of learning. We should begin with a PI, include the following for each key professional listed on the form: the name and title, education institutions, location, degrees, year conferred, and field of study, the roles in other relevant current or past research, employment history. List only the relevant publications in chronological order, and you put the titles and complete references. Then you should list all staff whom you need, including the professional and non-professional, even when you're not requesting a salary. There are some projects where we put staff, but we say, this is pro bono. We are not requesting salaries for Professor Tumwine, for example, but he's going to be a member of, he's going to be staff on this project. The reviewers appreciate you are giving estimates of the effort and not the salary for each person. The effort, let me try and explain it before, because you will ask me a question if I don't explain it. If your salary is 1 million per month, so your salary is 1 million per month. That means in the 4 weeks, you are earning 250,000 per week. 250,000 per week. And there are 5 days in a week. So the 250 divided by 5, that means your salary is 50,000 per day. And remember, we have said there are 5 days in a week. So if the person spends 1 day a week, 1 out of 5 equals 20%. So you will say, NAMSOKE will contribute 20% effort. That means the equivalent of 1 day a week on the project. And since the salary is 50,000, that means NAMSOKE will be paid 50,000 per week on the project. And 50,000 times 4 is 200,000. So in the budget, you should budget for 200,000 shillings for NAMSOKE per month. If you try to put a lot of money, it should be based on the salary and how much each person will spend. So if NAMSOKE is employed by Busitema, you cannot give them 5 days a week because they have to do their other work. So you have to decide how much time each person spends on the project because they are not going to resign to work on your project. So the staff who work full time, they are the research assistants, the project coordinator, etc. But the PI, like you already have your job. You cannot claim to work full time on this work. You might say, I will work 2 days a week out of the 5. So that's 40% effort. I hope that is clear. Let's just, the formatting, I think I've talked about that. Submitting your grant, you make sure that deadline, you know it. Please make sure you know that deadline. Standard receipt dates can be found online of the application. So thank you very much indeed, Dr. Mobuke, and thank you for the 92 people who attended this session. I cut out one big chunk out of the presentation because I thought we don't need it for the moment. And if you talk too much, people will remember nothing. So I'm extremely grateful to you. Over to you, Mobuke, and people can unmute and say what they want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Tumwine, for an engaging and exciting discussion that you have taken us through. You know, I'm surprised sometimes on online meetings like this or webinars. By the time the presenter finishes, you have about 40% of the people remaining. But I'm very surprised that almost 100% actually of the people who logged in have remained till the end. So it shows how important this is, and we are very grateful for that. Perhaps I'll entertain about 3 questions to Professor Tumwine. Because of time, he has to go and all of you have to go to your other duties. Can we have about 3 questions for Professor, and then we can end.
I can go first. I have a question.
Yes,
my name
Kennedy.
Is Kennedy from Department of Pharmacy. So I want to ask Professor, dealing with
which department of pharmacy? There are so many departments. Which university?
McCHS University.
Okay.
I want to.
The name is who? The name?
Kennedy Odokonyero.
Yes, Kennedy.
So, yes, Professor, I mean, sometimes you put a lot of effort in a research grant application and then it gets rejected. And then you get so frustrated and then you wouldn't want to apply for the next one. How do you deal with rejection? That's the question, really.
How do you deal
to get the motivation to apply with rejection of a grant application to actually get the courage to apply for the next one?
Kennedy, let me tell you.
Yes.
As Tumwine, I get only 1 out of grants that I apply for. So never get discouraged. When you apply for the grant and it is not accepted, then they will give you the reasons why they did not accept. So you need to, it's bad. It's like actually for it, it's not like an amputation. For papers which we are writing, if they reject you, it's like an amputation. But for a grant, if they reject you, it is just falling down on a bicycle when you are learning how to ride. So if you are learning how to ride and you fall, Kennedy, don't you wake up and continue riding? So when we are rejected, it's not good, because we spend a lot of time with our colleagues. So what we do, we put it aside. Don't you read? Yeah, you are rejected. So put it aside for 1 or 2 weeks. Don't go to it, because you'll be angry. So leave it aside 1 or 2 weeks. And then after that, when you are cool, go through the comments and the scores. They will tell you what reason they gave. And they may have rejected it forever, or they may have rejected it and said, please, it says a resubmit. And when they say resubmit, you should celebrate, because it means that they will point out the areas that were weak, where you scored poorly, then you revise those areas to strengthen them. And you will most likely get the grant on revision. If they did not ask you to revise, keep it. And then go online and look for other funders. So if it is NIH who have rejected you, you go to Medical Research Council, UK, EDTCP, the European, Karolinska, the Swedes, the Norwegians, the Canadians. There are many funders. If one funder rejects you, don't worry. It will annoy you, but you can put your proposal elsewhere, and you can use even the comments which they gave you to strengthen that application, and you send it elsewhere. So in a nutshell, writing a proposal is very, and it is rejected, very painful, but it should give us the learning. It should help us to get up from that bicycle where we have fallen and write it again if we are given a chance. And if we are not given a chance, we send it elsewhere. So it's a learning process. Not every grant you write will be granted.
Thank you, Prof. Jemima, your hand is up.
Thank you very much. I would like
Where
to
are you
appreciate
calling from, Jemima?
Sorry, I'm from Clark International University, and I'm a lecturer there.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate the clarity and simplicity of a very important message. I have a question about the preliminary research. Should this be in form of a proper research conducted like with ethical approval and everything, or can it be just informal interviews, say with like 50 people? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's why I said normally when you are planning research, it depends on the context. So probably it would have been good for you to give me an example. But preliminary data is about the subject collected either informally or formally. So you can collect data informally, but in Uganda that would become illegal. Reason is that every human participant research in Uganda actually every research, but me, I'm on the human participant research. So every human participant research in Uganda needs ethical approval. So you can start right now. Once your idea is very well developed, you can actually present your proposal for ethical review, as I said earlier, and you put in a pilot phase. So you can put in a pilot phase, and the work collected during the pilot phase, you can then use it for NIH funding, etc., etc. So that's a difficult one, but you need ethical approval, yes. If you are in a clinical situation, you can ask for waiver of consent. You may have seen patients, for example, in radiology, you're having so many images, so many x-rays, and you ask the ethical approval for you, waiver for you to waive consent and permission to use that data without consent. And that one you can use as preliminary data that you've been collecting over a period. You ask ethical approval to allow you to use it, and you use it. And normally, it's not a serious, they will not refuse. So Jemima, I'm very much interested in Clark. Let me tell you why. When it started as the other name, IHK, I think it was, they applied to be accredited as a university, and the National Council for Higher Education, I don't know if it was in their wisdom, asked me to chair the committee that was approving that university. And that's how I like it very much. Jemima.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. And maybe just to add, there are always these small projects for mid-level faculty within institutions. I see many of them at MakCHS, where you get small awards. So those awards can help, I think, people to collect small amounts of data with some little funding, but they are really, I think, preparing people for bigger grants as PIs in future. So that can work as preliminary data as well. So Hope, your hand is up. Derek Hope. I thought Hope was a female name.
Sorry, I think I kept my hand up, but I had the same question with the previous participant.
Where are you calling from? Where are you calling from, sir?
I am Derek from Muni University.
Muni?
Yes.
Hey, you mean even Muni was there?
Yeah, we are here. We are present.
Okay, you talk and then I'll tell you about Muni.
No, actually, I had the same question about the preliminary data. I had the same question.
How is Christine, your vice chancellor?
You have explained it very well. Yes.
How is Madam Christine, professor?
She's fine.
Yeah, she's my friend, and say hello to her. Say Professor Tumwine greets you.
Oh, thank you. I will deliver that.
And Muni NTC, I'm interested in it. I've been there. I'm also interested in secondary school education. So I chair Kabale Governing Council, NTC. So we always meet these NTCs all over the country. So we were in Muni a few years ago. So I'm also involved there.
You're most welcome.
So thank you. I think we shall have 3 more questions and then we end. Richard, please tell us where you're from and then you can ask your question. Richard M.A. Richard, can you hear me? Okay, Richard is not on. Muhindo Herbert, You can unmute and ask your question. Tell us where you are from, which institution.
Yes, I think, Professor, thank you for the presentation.
Where are you calling from, Muhindo?
I'm calling from Kabale University.
Okay.
My question is, what if we, in case like we write, we request for like a research grant as a group, and maybe one of the members doesn't meet the minimum qualifications for, like to do that research? What happens to the rest of the members? Do you disqualify the whole group, or maybe you allow all others to continue and then you disqualify one?
No. Qualifications to do what?
Like for example, the reviewer get biased somewhere, like maybe one of the applicants did not submit a CV, maybe somewhere something went wrong with one of the applicants, then what happened to the rest?
Okay, that's good. That's a very good question. So that's why I am advising you to give yourself time, 6 months. And everybody who is an investigator on that project must produce the CV, the biosketch. Don't submit if the biosketch is not there. So you need to have a checklist. You say, Muhindo, do I have his biosketch? Yes, you take it. So you should not submit if all the biosketches are not there. They must be there, 100% of all the principal, of all the investigators. Are we together? They must be there. So if you submit, say you have 5 investigators and you only submit 3 biosketches, that proposal will be rejected immediately. Dr. Mbuke, allow me to say something else that I'd forgotten on the deadline. I wanted to give an example.
Yes, Prof.
But now we are in public, so I will not mention the person or the place. A colleague of mine had a huge project, national project, involving almost every regional referral hospital, and was heavily funded. So now the NIH put out a call. It was actually put out for him, but they had to put out a call for the whole world. And so they worked on this project. And of course, my colleague knew that they would get the project. So the deadline was on a Friday. The deadline for submission was on Friday. His workers, they submitted it on the Monday after the Friday. Of course, the project was not funded. And that was the end of that project. And whenever you go all over the country, you will see remnants of that project. But it lost funding, and that was the end of the project. So what you need to learn, you must have a checklist, and everything must ticked as correct. And the submission must be before the deadline. This project was submitted on Monday because on Friday they said the computer jammed. When the computer jams, that project is ended. So Muhindo, thank you so much. This Ugandan attitude of saying, I think with this one we can send tomorrow. No. Everything must be ticked, and if one is not there, you don't submit. That's how tough it is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Prof. I know people who have rushed to hotels to Serena where to get internet to submit on deadline day. So I think that's a very important point. So Ruben, please ask your question. Okay, Ruben is not on. Dr. Joseph Mpaji, you can ask your question. I think I'll allow 3 more questions and then we close.
Thank you, Chair. This is Joseph from Bustema University. I also want to add my voice to the rest to thank Professor for this wonderful presentation. Mine are really 2 requests to Professor. The first one is to see if, to ask him if possible, you could convert this presentation he has given us into some kind of like a manual, a write-up that people can access either online or buy somewhere, was so helpful. The second request to Professor, I wanted to know, Professor, what can we do in this country to increase on the local funding of research that we don't, because we are primarily depending on external funding. For national development also, we need to see that is local support goes up. So I don't know what you can do to promote local funding of research in this country.
Okay, so the first thing we must do is to interest everybody in research and to educate them what we mean by research, and to know that not every person can do research. I gave you an example of water which is going to heal headache. And if I say I want to do a randomized controlled trial to prove whether water heals headache, people will write on WhatsApp, Professor Tumwine is mentally ill. We know that water heals headache. So we need to change, we need to educate our people and give them scientific skills. Not just to get an A in biology at A level, or a 1 in chemistry at O level. That's not enough. Our students are studying for exam results. They do not appreciate science. So we need to strengthen the teaching of science. And for me, that's why I'm a board governing council of NTC Kavale, and we interact with Muni, with the one in and Kamuli, Kaliro, and all that. We need to cultivate the spirit of science in our community. There's a lot of witchcraft. There's a lot of disregard of science. People, when they talk online, they are talking rubbish. We need to respect science and to know that if I start bottling Tumwine water for treating headache, people should question me. Does Tumwine water really treat headache? But I will put it there, and I think you see it online. Kazere, no, those products business. I cannot talk about people or other things online. But our challenge is that there is no respect for science. So that's why this alliance we have with you, with Bisitam and others online, is very important. We should join a movement to promote science, scientific reasoning, and educate people about the importance of research. And then in terms of campaigning for money, the government is committed to scientific research, very, very committed. And there's money that is given out for research in every university, however small it is, and it depends on the budget. So I've been at the highest level of our many universities. We need to encourage universities to increase the research budget and not put it as a wish, but to put it as a need. In other words, we put it in the budget of the university. The biggest challenge is that the Ministry of Finance is not eager to introduce items on the budget, because for them, they want to implement what they did last year, or to implement less because the budget is cut. And the reason budget is cut is because of the challenges, new challenges we get, like COVID-19. So what we need to do is to work together as universities and ask for more science money. MakCHS got a reasonable amount of money for research. So we need to work with the other universities, Muni, Busitema, Kawale, Lira, Soroti, etc. These new universities, and we go and beg. And we go and beg. And when you ask, the worst thing that can happen to you is you don't get. So asking is not a bad thing. And we know that our vice president, she was Minister of Finance when University of Kawale, of Lira, and of Soroti were established. And Munu had already been established, and Busitema. So there is political commitment. And what we need to do is to go through the correct channels and campaign and ask for money, not as an individual university, not like Busitema or Kawale or Muni, but together. So MakCHS has this grant. We are also requesting X, Y, and Z. You get me, Mpaji?
Yes, Professor, it's very clear.
Yeah. So the critical thing is to try and work together, but not as competitors. When we work together, we gain more. So as new universities, MakCHS can support the new universities to access grants, even national grants. And what does MakCHS gain? Well, we are transferring knowledge and skills to these young brothers and sisters.
Yes, thank you, Prof. I don't know if you have time to answer 2 more questions. I see 2 more hands.
I can answer 10.
So Yvonne, please ask your question, and then Ruben will ask after you.
Hello, thank you so much for that presentation. My name is Yvonne Tusimire from the Busitema University, Department of Polymer and Textiles. I actually wrote my question in the chat, but it seems it wasn't seen. My question was that we have a lot of grants that come in, but they come in when the deadline is really due. What would you advise us? Should we write proposals and wait for such grants to come along, or should we only focus on grants proposals that give us, grant applications that give us more time to arrange our work? What would you say about that?
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you very much. So that is, you are not alone. The grants come, they are for October 5th. Can you imagine October 5th? And now we are September 16th. So we have basically 3 weeks to write that proposal. And yet what I said is that you need 6 months to prepare your proposal. So that is very frustrating, and I'm very, very familiar with it. But we can be innovative. So your grants office can be innovative. If you are studying polymer and textiles, actually even you yourself, you can do it yourself, Yvonne. you can go online and you look for, and I can help you, but let me see how you can do it. You are a woman, you are in science, you are studying polymers and textiles. So, for example, there is Elsevier Foundation. They publish books, but they have a foundation in which they have put aside money to promote research. And that project is called Women in Research. So if I'm doing polymer and textiles and I'm Yvonne, I think that sounds like a female name, I can go direct to the funders. You know, I write them an email and say, and I market myself. I'm Yvonne, I'm 30-year-old, I have a master's in X, Y, and Z, and I'm interested in doing a PhD in polymer and textiles. I'm stuck. I've been looking for money for my PhD. And is it possible? Could you help me? The worst answer you get is no. So they will write to you an email and say, oh, thank you very much, Yvonne. This year, we've actually finished the process of PhD grant, but next year, we have a special call for women in industry. So, and it will be in July 2022. So now you have started writing the proposal. You write it, you don't know what the call will be, and when the call comes, and maybe in April, when you have not seen anything, you write back, say, hey, I am Yvonne, and this is what I wanted to do. Oh, okay. It's coming, the call is coming within a few weeks' time. They will send it to you. So we need to be proactive. We call it proactive, not reactive. The biggest challenge with our researchers, and particularly the young researchers, they are reactive. They write proposals when they see the call. No, get your idea, write a proposal. Write a proposal. The science part of it, write it and give the idea, then keep it. Get another one, keep it. Then when the grants come, see which one of those will fit in this call. One is yes, get prepared. And use the internet usefully to look for opportunities, not simply to know what has happened to Trump, those stupid things.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ruben, ask your question, Ruben. Unmute. To sing with a Ruben.
Yes, Professor. Thank you for the presentation, Professor.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Bishop Barham University, Kabale.
Bishop Barham. I didn't know Bishop Barham was online.
Ah, we are there, Professor.
Mm.
The Department of My question goes like,
loudly, I can't hear you. Loudly. I can't hear.
Yeah, we know research grants are competitive, and we are looking at research grants are competitive. And I'm looking at one submitting research proposals and the grant proposals to different funders. And they're going to look at the plagiarism if they are going to apply in different funding agencies. Then secondly,
no. Please don't make a speech. So the first one, I'm not getting you, Ruben. What are you saying?
I'm asking whether the research funders are not going to check the plagiarism if the research applications are submitted in different areas.
They are going to look for plagiarism.
Yes, since it will be resubmitted to different organizations.
No. My friend, plagiarism means you are taking somebody's work, idea, or words, using them as your own without acknowledgement. That's what plagiarism means. In other words, you are stealing other people's ideas or other people's work. That's what plagiarism means. So now, what are you fearing? What is the question?
I'm looking at the grant applications being submitted in different organizations for funding, and yet they are edited by different people.
Oh, so if you are going to submit a grant, do not submit it to more than one funder. Let me tell you why. Funders talk to each other. And I'm telling you from experience, I worked for Oxfam as the advisor for Africa and the Middle East. And my job was to churn out money. But in the process, we are talking to save the children. You know, and you even tell them, we have received 20 applications from Tanzania or from Uganda. They share, and then they say, you know, this one, we had a good grant here, but our money is exhausted. Can we send you this? So they even send us the applications, and they contact the applier, the applicant, to say, we didn't have enough money, but we have forwarded your application to Oxfam. Could you contact them? So, plagiarism, you must not plagiarize. You must not take anybody's work and call it yours. That's very, very important. And submit one grant to one funder. Don't submit to many funders. So if a grant has been rejected, that one, you then go to another funder. But don't submit the grant simultaneously to more than one funder. Have you got me to Singwiri?
Yes, Professor.
Thank you.
I have some proposal here.
I cannot get you. You know, you must learn to ask only one question. If you have a second question, then ask it now. This is part of communication. What is the second question?
I was proposing if it's possible for MakCHS to form an inter-university research association incorporating even these new universities which are coming in and they have not taken deep roots in research. Thank you, Professor.
That one you can try and implement. It's beyond my remit. My remit is to give you this talk, but you can implement it. You can discuss it with other universities and see what to do.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. I think let's have one last question from I see Busoga Health Forum. That would be our last question.
But who is the person?
That's what I'm trying to get to. Busoga Health Forum, unmute yourself and you tell us who you are. And then ask your question.
Hello, this is Moses Changwa. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Busoga Health Forum. I'm so grateful to listen to Professor Tumwine James. We interacted in Iganga some time back.
I am James Tumwine. I'm not Tumwine James.
James Tumwine. So great.
And by the way, I am chair of Iganga Mayuge board.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how you know me.
Yeah, so my question is, we have seen most of the research opportunities, research grants, but in most cases, they require very high level principal investigators, PhDs, professors. And for some organizations that are just implementing work, but they want to get into the research opportunities, we wanted to get an advice on how best we can connect, to link with where we can get those investigators that qualify to be part of these studies, because the institutions we are basically implementing, but we want also to participate in the research.
Very good, Moses. Very good. Where are you based?
I'm based in Iganga.
Okay, so before you reach Iganga,
yes,
have you not seen the MakCHS office?
I have seen it.
Right, in that office, there is Dr. and this is PhD, Dr. Dan Kajungu.
My teacher,
yes. He is the director of MakCHS. He is a prolific researcher. When you want to write a project, get to him. He's on the ground, a few kilometers from where you are. And he's MakCHS. MakCHS, I'm the board chair, and I know him because I recruited him. Okay. And we recruited him from university in Belgium. He didn't even go anywhere. He came straight to Iganga. Okay. So if you don't have somebody who can work with you, you get people who can work with you, who are there. You know, and Dan has a lot of projects at Iganga Mayuge. Yes. So what you need now is to connect with him. There are many other people with PhDs, for example, at Busoga University, at Namasagali, etc., etc. You work with people you have. And right now I can identify even 10 for you, except that Dr. Mabuke will not give me the time. But I can assure you, Busoga Health Forum, you are not short of people on the ground. The biggest challenge is for people now to start looking at other qualifications other than a PhD. And that's the unfortunate thing with Uganda. If you just look at that person's qualification and can this person help my research, from Ginger up to the time we finish Busoga, I can name 20 people. Moses.
Yes, Prof.
Are you getting me?
Yes, Prof, I'm getting you.
Hey, you know. I was in Mwiri for my senior 6, so I know a little bit of our language.
Wow, that's great.
So are we together? Please, you are not short of people. You get them and you work with them. Right now, we won a grant. Let me tell you about it. And it's going to be implemented in Iganga Mayuge and in Chotera. And it is about sickle cell anemia using the method that I described earlier on in my talk.
Yes.
I'm one of the investigators, but Professor Sewangambo, who is in MakCHS, is the overall PI. You understand?
Yes, Prof.
Area of implementation, Iganga Mayuge, and I'm the one who proposed the Iganga Mayuge.
Okay.
So do you see the point?
I get it, Prof.
So don't become insular. Don't become Busoga specific. Become Ugandan. And then you can pick anybody, anywhere to help you.
Okay.
Are we together, sir?
Yes, Prof.
Thank you.
Welcome, please.
Thank you, Professor Tumwine. I think the questions are many, but I think we shall get another session where we just have question and answer, kind of session. I think people have a lot of questions around this and a lot of interest, because that's why we are all, and it contributes to our progress. So we are very, very inspired, Professor Tumwine, and I would like to observe the commitment you've shown today. I think all of us should take it as an example as we go back to different workstations. Despite the challenges we had in the morning, I talked to Professor Tumwine and he was moving to get a place where he can actually deliver this talk. And he told me, because I suggested, Prof, can we postpone? He said, no, I'm committed, and I committed to people, and I'm looking for a place where I can settle. And indeed, he has delivered. So, Professor Tumwine, I think this is a great example. We've had more than 2 hours since morning. I know you have a lot of other tasks and duties, but you've been committed to this. And I'm very, very happy, and I'm sure the participants are very happy, and they have learned a lot. And we also appreciate and learn from you, your spirit of mentorship and how you want people to progress, which makes you happy and so on. All of us should actually take your example seriously as we move up our careers. So Professor Tumwine, thank you very much for your time. And I do hope when we call upon you next time, you will again allow to interact and share your valuable ideas. So thank you very much. Thank you, participants. And I think I can release you and we attend to our other duties.
Just a
Prof,
moment. Just a
yes,
moment.
Professor.
So I want to thank you very much with HEPI for giving me this opportunity to share my experience and little knowledge. I hope that the participants have benefited. Let us, if they registered, this become a movement for promoting research in our region. Thank you.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah, I'm sure they're all registered, and let's continue to collaborate in our different universities. And professors emphasized we have to collaborate. This is how we shall move forward, and we should remove the unnecessary spirit of useless competition. So let's collaborate to move research in the country forward. So thank you once again, Professor Tumwine, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you, participants, and I wish you the rest of the day to progress fruitfully. Bye-bye.